This is Join Us in France, episode 489. 489. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and Join Us in France is the podcast where we take a conversational journey through the beauty, culture, and flavors of France. Today, I bring you a trip report with Joel Joslin, where he showcases his 21-day solo traveler's journey through France. And he does it in a wonderfully candid manner. I love that because I love to keep it real. This podcast is supported by donors and listeners who buy my tours and services, including my itinerary consult service, my GPS self-guided tours of Paris on the Voice Map app, or take a day trip with me around the southwest of France in my electric car. You can browse all of that at my boutique, joinusinfrance.com/boutique. Patreon supporters get the episode as soon as it's ready and ads free. There won't be a magazine today because I'm away exploring the beautiful Aveyron department for a few days. I'll be back next week with details about access around the Olympic sites, especially before the opening ceremony. But I do want to thank all my patrons who have kept this podcast going for a long time. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Patty Mulkeen, Krista Critter, Carol Toomey, Rebecca, A.S., and Christy R. And to all of my current patrons, it's wonderful to have you on board in the community of Francophiles. I'll post some photos of my Aveyron visit next week because the new messaging feature of Patreon works really well. So I'm enjoying that. How do you become a patron and get this podcast ads-free? Go to patreon.com/joinus. That's Patreon, join us, no spaces or dashes. And to support Elise, go to patreon.com, Elise Art, ELYSART, and thank you very much. Bonjour, Joel, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Hi, Annie. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to see you. And we have an interesting conversation laid out today. You had a rather long trip to France. You were here for 21 days, and this was a solo trip. So can you tell us when your trip took place and more or less briefly where you went so that then we can dig in more details?
Yeah, so I went to France last October, 2022, and end of September, I guess. I spent about a week in Paris and then 5 days in Normandy, 3 days in Brittany, 4 days in Strasbourg, and 3 days in Nice.
Oh, so you went all over the place. Did you land into Paris?
Yes.
And flew out of Paris as well?
I flew out of Nice.
Out of Nice, okay.
Yeah.
And how did you get around most of that time?
A lot of it was by train. So I went from Paris to Normandy to Brittany by train. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I used a car some in Normandy, which actually, but if I could change one thing about my trip, I probably would have used one less because I didn't really need it and I could have gotten a more central hotel. It was helpful for the aide de Mont Saint-Michel, but I probably didn't need it for the rest of it.
Interesting.
To get from Saint-Malo in Brittany to Strasbourg, I had to change trains a couple of times. It was a day mostly on the train, but I didn't mind it. You know, like a long train ride is a lot more relaxing, like a long drive or flight. And
that's true.
There's a lot of nice scenery, so it was just a day to rest a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I flew Strasbourg to Nice on Volatea. It was like 2 hours.
Ah, yeah. Not my favorite airline. Did everything go well?
Yeah, well, it was fine. We have budget lines, super budget lines like that in the US too. I think they're generally okay for short trips, I think.
Yeah, and it's true that in France, if like you experienced, if you go from Brittany all the way to Strasbourg, you have to go through Paris. You will have to change trains in Paris. And if you had tried to do Strasbourg to Nice, you probably would have had to go back to Paris as well and change trains in Paris. So, you know, it's one of the reasons why the regional airlines are still needed. We can't do everything by train, even though lots of French people would like to. But the other issue that comes up is that French trains are not cheap when you compare them to other countries in Europe, like Spanish trains, Italian trains, German trains. Were quite expensive by comparison. And so that's why we still have a lot of people driving and taking airplanes, even those not very good Volotea flights that I don't like, but, you know, such as life.
Well, It was so, it was so cheap. I didn't really mind it.
Exactly. It's very cheap. Yeah, very cheap. So I'm interested in what you said about Brittany, because I usually recommend that people take the train into Brittany, but then rent a car, especially if they're going to do all the landing beaches and all that by themselves.
You mean
Perhaps
Normandy?
You had a tour, right?
You mean Normandy, right?
Normandy. Sorry. Yes. Normandy.
Yeah. So I was in a couple locations in Normandy. I spent the first 2 days in Rouen, which I really liked Rouen. It's a very nice town, nice city.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I were to live in France, which I don't think will ever happen, it's just hypothetically, I might pick Rouen because it's a very, very pretty city and just the right size city for me. And it's close to Paris. So it's very good location. So yeah, I really liked Rouen. And then I got a car for the more Western Central Normandy. I took a tour for the D-Day stuff.
Okay.
A lot of those roads are really, really tricky, like the small country roads you have to go through. So I don't think I could bail out that car either.
Where do you normally drive in the U.S.?
Well, I live in North Carolina.
Okay.
Central North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham.
So it's interesting because, if you take a tour, you can see a lot very fast. Those tour guides, which company did you do your tour with?
I don't remember the name.
Was it perhaps Overlord Tours?
I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bunch of companies that do this. And there are some companies that will also drive you to the Mont Saint-Michel, but from Bayeux. Where were you staying in Normandy?
I stayed in like a kind of a countryside hotel. I kind of, in retrospect, I think probably would have been better if I just stayed in Bayeux and just got in a car to get to Mont Saint-Michel. That's the only time I really needed it. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, you can do a lot in France with just tour guides and the train, but there is no way to get from Bayeux to Mont Saint-Michel by train, as far as I know.
I think you can go take a train to Rennes and then a shuttle bus, but that's so much trouble.
Yeah. So Dol de Bretagne is the place, or Rennes, I think, probably, are places where you could get a train to close. So you get to Dol de Bretagne, and then from there you can take a bus. But honestly, that's for people who have time and who could, who don't mind spending a whole day just in transportation. Most people want to drive to the Mont Saint-Michel, spend half a day there, and leave the next day. Is that what you did?
Yeah, pretty much. I got delayed on going to Mont Saint-Michel because I got a flat tire on the way. I'm not really used to European roads, but they fixed it after a couple hours. And then I had a pleasant drive there. And yeah, I saw it and left mid-late afternoon. And then I dropped my car off at Saint-Malo and checked into my hotel.
So your flat tire thing, what happened? Did you just call the assistants and they took care of you?
Yeah, it took them a while, but they got to it eventually.
Yeah. Usually assistance in France, I mean, you can get any assistance anywhere in France. It's just a question of waiting. So I assume they towed your car to a tire place and then you waited while they fixed the car?
No, they just replaced it there.
Oh, okay. Even better.
I was there 3 nights in Saint-Malo. If I'd been in Brittany 1 or 2 more days, I would have wanted a car then. But, I wasn't there that long. So I did take the ferry to Dinard, though.
How did you like Mont Saint-Michel, the time you spent there, and Saint-Malo? I'd love to hear your opinions about these places.
I really enjoyed both of them. Like Saint-Malo, in there, it was like kind of a cloudy, drizzly day, which isn't the best for photos, but it's, very atmospheric. I really enjoyed Mont Saint-Michel, and Saint-Malo I liked a lot too. I liked walking along the walls, seeing the sea. I like the really extreme tides.
Yeah.
That at low tide, there's land bridges to outer islands, and at high tide, the waves are attacking the sea walls.
Yes. This weekend, as a matter of fact, is a high tide. We're recording this in the late October, and this weekend is a high tide, and you can see. I mean, this is normal for Saint-Malo. You can see the water totally hitting the first row of houses. It's quite spectacular to see that. I mean, they must have very good windows and doors because they get hit really hard, those windows and doors. Yeah. Some of these houses are really close to the wall, aren't they?
Yeah. And I like the food. There are a lot of good crepes and seafood.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Crepes you can. And it's pretty inexpensive, too. I mean, seafood is more expensive, but crepes are not very expensive.
Yeah, I had a lot of crepes and galettes there.
Did you get tired of eating out all the time?
Not really. I mean, the way I did it, I tended breakfast, most of the time I would just go to a boulangerie and get a croissant or something with my coffee. Then for lunch, I'd sit down and get something like a cheese plate or maybe sandwich or something like that. And then
Uh-huh.
for dinner, I'd get something a big, like 3 or 4 course meal. So that way I pace myself how much I ate out.
Yeah. What sort of budget did you have for food on this trip? Do you remember more or less?
I think for breakfast and lunch, I went fairly cheap. For dinner, I spent a little more, but I didn't go to like super high price places. For dinner, I'd usually get like 2 drinks, starter, main course, and dessert, maybe one other thing. And I tried to stay under 50, maybe 60 euros for it, which was, especially once I got out of Paris, wasn't that difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Paris is always more expensive for everything anyway. Okay. So was 3 nights in Saint-Malo too long, perhaps?
Not really. I mean, I was kind of exhausted, so it was nice to be able to take it a little slow. One more night would have I could I rode the ferry over to check out Dinard a little bit too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. One more night would have been too much, though, without a car. But if I stayed any longer, I would have wanted to get a car and drive around.
Yeah. No, it's a really beautiful place and lots of good weather at times. At times, not always. So late September to October. Do you feel like you lucked out on the weather or not so much?
Yeah, I would say so. It didn't rain that much and the temperature was good.
All right, let's get into your favorites. Like I asked you to rank your favorites that you saw on this trip. So this is where we jump around a little bit. But you listed the first as your Chartres Cathedral. Tell me more.
I took a day trip there from Paris, and it was very beautiful, and I liked the Shadow Village too. I almost wanted to spend a night there, but I ended up going back to Paris. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. It was very beautiful.
And it felt like a village to you.
Yeah.
It's a city, but it's not a huge city. I mean, when you're out of Paris, it feels like a very small place, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah, Mont Saint-Michel I really liked. I really enjoyed Strasbourg, and I took a group tour of the Alsatian countryside. We went to Mikvir, Egisheim, and Colmar.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Was this a bus tour or something, or was
Van
it
tour.
like a small vehicle?
It was a van.
And was it all English speakers in the van?
Yeah, I think most of the others were from Germany, but they spoke English.
And what about the food in Alsace? It's very different from the rest of the country, isn't it?
Yeah. The food I liked the food. It was very different, more German, obviously. I had some really good sausage and some really good black forest cake. The last meal I had in Strasbourg wasn't the best. I think I picked kind of a tourist trap place, but besides that, I enjoyed the food.
How much time did you spend planning your evening meals? I mean, at lunchtime, obviously, you kept it simple, but for your evening meals, are you the type of person who does a ton of research, or you just like to go with the flow?
Usually, I wouldn't pick them out days in advance. I would usually try to get a reservation for where I was going to eat in the evening by afternoon to make sure they'd have a spot for me. But yeah, I'd go by like hotel recommendations a lot of the time, or think guidebooks in a couple cases, or just what seemed good to me.
Hopefully you listened to the podcast before you went as well.
Yeah, I listened to some episodes. Yeah.
Because there are some good recommendations on the podcast as well. So that's very cool. All right. And then the other things that you list are in the south, Saint-Paul-de-Vence.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was in Nice 3 days, which was a good day in the trip. Yeah, and I spent one day, morning, I think I went to the farm for the same day. I also went to the Chagall Museum. But anyway, I took the bus to Saint-Paul-de-Vence and just spent a few hours there. It was very nice.
So that was, because getting to Saint-Paul-de-Vence is not the easiest thing in the world. So probably the tourist office told you how to get the bus or something?
I think I followed the guide. I'd read before about it. Yeah, but the bus drive, once you get out of the city, it's very scenic.
Yes. So what I forgot to ask at the beginning, how many times had you visited France before? Was this your first time or?
I had been once before in like 2015, I think. I went to Brit, and then I went to Paris for a few days at the end. And Paris, that was the best part of the trip. So I wanted to go back and see more of France. So yeah, actually Paris, I've told you about before, the trip got off to a little bit of a rough start because I got sick a few days into Paris. I wasn't like seriously sick, just a mild cold. If it had happened like late in the trip, I'd just push through. But it was early, so I decided I just got to rest this off. So I spent like a whole day and at least half of 2 more days just lying in my hotel room.
Yeah. Did you have to see a doctor or no?
No, it was nothing serious.
Yeah, that's a bummer when you get sick and you waste. I mean, I guess you need to get better. So,
Yeah.
you spend some time in bed. I guess that's just how it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
In Paris, did you have things you wanted to do, or are you just the type of traveler? You strike me as the type of traveler who just shows up somewhere and looks around.
There have been some museums I wanted to go to. I did like the Musée Rodin. I made it there. Yeah, there were a few different things I wanted to do, but I had to cancel a lot of it.
Yeah. So Paris was not the best part of the trip, but then things got better. But this happens to a lot of people. They make plans and then they can't follow the plan as well as they had hoped for because something happens. A family member gets sick or they get sick or whatever.
Yeah. And while I was like in my hotel, I just sit in my hotel in Paris. I also ended up just making a few other last minute changes to the itinerary, like just basically dropping a couple 1 or 2 night places and just consolidating a little bit, which I think was for the best.
Mm-hmm. You did. I mean, you had a lot of things on your 21 days. It's not impossible. It's just, you got around a lot of different places and it always complicates your life a little bit. Around Nice, did you see anything else besides Saint-Paul-de-Vence?
I went to the Chagall Museum and I took a walking tour.
All right. A walking tour with a group or a voice map?
The group. We went up to the chateau and it was, I really enjoyed Nice.
Yeah. So did you go up to the chateau where there's no chateau or did you go to a chateau that actually exists? Because I don't remember a chateau that was occupied during the war.
Well, there's a fort, like you have to take an elevator part of the way to.
Okay.
This big rampart overlooking the sea.
So the Chateau Hill is what it is.
Yeah, and then there's the ruins of an old chateau.
Yes, there's a little bit of ruins. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I really like the food in Nice too. It's like nice mix of Mediterranean freshness and French complexity, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's really good. They serve you the best pizzas in Nice. I loved all the pizza. And if you go to the episodes that we've had about Nice, especially the one with the lady that wrote the voice map tour. I can't remember her name or the episode number. I'll put it in the show notes. But she recommended a lot of really good restaurants in Nice because she's been living there for decades. And so she's tried them all. And so she had a few that, come out on top.
I don't remember much of the restaurants now. I did send you one, La Femme du Boulangerie, which isn't just a bakery. Yeah, I enjoyed my dinner there so much. I had lunch there a couple of days later.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, I enjoyed pretty much every meal I ate. I had one of those, I forget what it's called, but it's basically a Niçoise salad sandwich, olive oil drizzled all over it.
Ah, yes. Un pain bagna with tuna fish in it, right?
That was really good. Yeah, I had it for lunch one day.
Very good. Oh, all right. And now we yank back to Strasbourg because you liked the Strasbourg Cathedral and some museums. I would like to hear which ones and what you recommend people do there.
Yeah, the cathedral's really nice. It's got a big square around it with a lot of cool stuff. And there's a museum about the cathedral nearby.
Yeah.
And then there's like kind of this triple museum of like, I think fine arts, decorations, and ancient stuff. I only made the fine arts one, but it's really nice. And then there's a few blocks away, there's the Museum of the City of Strasbourg, which, I really enjoyed that too. Part of it was closed for renovations or something.
It's a very good one. I think that was my favorite, the history of Strasbourg, because I just like history.
Yeah, I took the boat tour too.
Yes, the boat tours are fantastic in Strasbourg.
Yeah.
I love that. I thought that was really done better than most cities.
Yeah, it was really nice.
You had mentioned Rouen in the beginning, but you did a walking tour in Rouen. Was it, again, a group tour?
Where?
Rouen.
Oh, Rouen. I don't think I did a walking tour there.
Ah, okay. Oh, you said walking around Rouen. So you just like the city.
Yeah.
Did you find it that different from other cities? Like, is it very different from Strasbourg or?
It's not like hugely different. I just like the feel of it. And I went to like the Joan of Arc, a place where they have the trial reenacted in 1 or 2 other spots.
All right. So your D-Day beach tour, do you remember all the places where they took you?
We went to Pointe du, no, I'm butchering pronunciation there.
No, it's fine. Pointe du Hoc,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. I think one of the beaches, maybe Omaha, and the
Mhm.
cemetery. It was a half-day tour.
Oh yeah, then and did you feel that was too much? Like some people really love these historical tours. Did you feel it was too much? Did you feel it was just enough?
Follow the distance, right?
Uh-huh. They didn't throw too much history at you all at once.
No, I mean, it felt just right. Yeah.
And are you generally like a history fan? Do you read history books or anything like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I do. I
Mm-hmm.
actually have a history degree undergrad.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you go. So did you specialize in anything?
Not really, no.
Mm, just a general. But did you do much European history or mostly US history?
I did more European. My senior seminar relevant to this was about the French Revolution. But now I work in computer science. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. Now, you went to a museum in Paris that I have not seen. It's the Gustave Moreau Museum.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I forgot about that one. Yeah, it's about the French painter Gustave Moreau. It's pretty small, but has a lot of nice paintings.
Huh.
I did that the first day I was there.
So did you like it because it's a smaller museum that you can get through quickly or?
Yeah, it was a good size and it had a lot of nice paintings. So
Yeah. It sounds like you like medium-sized cities, perhaps medium-sized museums. You don't love the Louvre, like spend the whole day in the Louvre.
I actually do enjoy the Louvre.
Okay.
I've been there once. I didn't make it there this time, but someday maybe I'll go again and see more of it.
Are there things that you wish you had known about Paris or about France in general that you want to share with everybody? That you just discovered or you were surprised by or whatever?
I don't know. Like if the biggest thing I would have probably changed from the final itinerary I ended up with, like I said, was just staying in Bayeux for like West Central Normandy and just getting a car the day I went to to Mont Saint Michel and then Saint-Malo.
Yeah.
I was mostly good about avoiding tourist traps, but there were one or two I ended up in for restaurants. So I just, you probably don't want to go, at least for like dinner, you probably don't want to go to places that are like on the squares facing the big sites. A few blocks back will be better. A lot of it be cheaper too.
Yeah. So that's always an interesting question is, touristy. What's touristy? Well, sometimes, and this is a reality in France, in minor towns, you don't really have a lot of choice. Like tomorrow, Elise and I are going to visit some towns in the Gers. So it's a rural department. Where we're going is 2-hour drive from Toulouse. And we're not going to find a lot of restaurants. There's not, we might have a choice between 2 or 3. So it's, in cases like that, you have to go to the restaurant that's open on the town square because that's what's open, Otherwise, it's going to be a sandwich or a grocery store stop or something.
Sure. Yeah. Just mostly mean to medium to large cities.
Yeah. Medium large cities, you usually get a lot more choice. And I don't know, touristy to me obviously you're a visitor from the US, you're a tourist. And so there's no shame in going to touristy places so long as you get a good experience, a good meal for a decent price. If the prices are inflated or if the food is just not so interesting or whatever, that's a different matter.
Yeah. I did have dinner at a couple places like that, but I enjoyed the vast majority of the meals. I had a lot. So
What's your favorite thing to order when you're in France?
let's see. It's really basic. Croissants are really good. I liked escargots, the cheese. I'd usually get some large meat thing for dinner or occasionally fish.
So is like if they have escargot as an appetizer, you will always take that?
Most of the time.
Uh-huh. See, that's funny to me because that's what tourists do. French people don't typically order escargot because we can have it anytime and, but visitors, they want to try the escargot. Of course they do. And it's pretty tasty because all that butter and garlic, it's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Let's see. You had a souffle at one of the restaurants you mentioned in your notes.
Oh, yes. It was a dessert souffle with like this caramel sauce. It was very.
Yes. Souffle is something else.
La Pantouche. Yeah. I was one of 2 restaurants and it's been a year since the trip, so I can't remember every restaurant I ate at. That was one of the best restaurants I ate in Paris.
It's called what? Le pain ou le...
La Pantruche.
Okay, interesting. I'll try and find it and put a...
And yeah, there's also another restaurant in Paris, Pony. I went there a couple times. It was a good place to go to while I was sick because it was near my hotel. And it's like a good brasserie / bar / burgers, like the kind of no fuss food you want when you're sick. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. One of the questions I ask on the forum is, what did you learn about France on this trip? And your answer is, I learned how varied and diverse the country is. I'd like you to, tell me more about this, because you did get around to a lot of different regions.
Right. So, well, first, there's just a whole lot of different landscapes there. There's coasts in Brittany and mountains and hills around Alsace, and then Nice, which is also coastal, but completely different kind. And then there's lots of different cultures. Paris is Paris, of course, and then Alsace is more German, Nice is more Italian, and also a little British. Kind of funny, it's an Italian-French town that a lot was built by the British.
Yeah, there were a lot of British moved there. The weather is pleasant.
The cuisine and food is very different from region to region, too.
Very good. So the last question we're going to get into is, did you make any mistakes on this trip? And this is where I want you to take your time and just tell me about the mistakes, because other people, we want them to avoid mistakes if they can.
Yeah, I mentioned I didn't really need a car in Normandy except for getting to Mont Saint-Michel. So I wasn't there long enough that I really needed one besides that. I think my initial itinerary was busier with more stops than I ended up with. So I did end up changing while I was in Paris. So it worked out pretty well. But I think the one I planned was a little bit more aggressive. And I think that would have been a mistake.
So what did you remove?
I removed a few things. Like I was originally going to spend a night in Mont Saint-Michel and go to a couple other places in Provence besides Nice. Strasbourg actually was originally going to be a day trip from Paris. And I ended up changing that around. I was too sick to go. And yeah, so it was actually pretty different, but I think the final itinerary worked out pretty well.
So you have to be nimble. I mean, that's just a fact. And because you were traveling by yourself, you were able to. It's harder when you're with, your significant other or with your parents or with your friends, or because getting everybody to agree on one thing is pretty difficult.
Yeah, so the first half of the trip had some ups and downs, but on the whole, I think it all turned out really well.
It's funny you said, I forgot that I generally do not enjoy driving in Europe.
Yeah.
The narrow roads. Did you rent a big car, or how big was this car you got?
It wasn't that big. I don't remember what brand it was, but yeah, it was medium sized, but I don't know. It's just like, the roads in the U.S., most parts of the U.S. are a lot wider. So like just getting used to the European roads is tricky.
Yeah, it is. It is. When you're not used to it, you said you got a flat tire from hitting a curb. It happened to me once as well. It happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just never a good thing. But honestly, there are places, and in Normandy, if you're not going to do a tour, you can't get to those places without a car. So it just depends. If your plan is to take a tour, then you don't need a car really ever, because if you set yourself, if you're in Bayeux and you take a Normandy beach tour and then you take another tour to take you to Mont Saint-Michel, which you can do, some companies do that, then that's it. You don't need a car for Normandy at all. I was talking to somebody just a few days ago who was interested in touring around Occitanie, where I live. And I don't know how you do it without, it's either a tour, like if you want to go to the Dordogne, if you're in Toulouse and you want to go to the Dordogne, it's either a tour or a private driver, or you rent a car. You can't get to those places. It's just a fact. And there's so many places where you don't need a car, at all. Like, it's fine. It's fine.
And like the one nice thing, the naked tour, like sometimes you can go through places a little faster than you like. Like I wasn't able to see as much as Colmar as I ideally would like on the tour. But nice thing is, since you don't have to concentrate on drive, you can just like enjoy the scenery as much as you want.
Yeah.
And the Alsatian countryside is very beautiful.
It's very nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other way to enjoy it is to just take buses. They have a good regional bus system, but it's again, it's for people who have time. So if you're going to be in Strasbourg for a few days, you can take a bus to most of these villages, a public bus, like a city bus, regional bus, I guess. And that will take you. Typically, that bus is going to be full of teenagers who don't have a driver's license yet and older people who don't want to drive anymore. And they take the bus. And you have a bus like pretty much every hour to go to these places like Colmar and Réquevilre and all that. So you can do it on the bus, but it takes longer. Everything takes longer if you do it that way. A tour is really the most efficient way to do it. They will just take you. And sometimes they yank you out a little bit too fast. It sounds like perhaps in Colmar, they said, let's move on a little too fast.
Yeah, I had actually been hoping to do the Unterlinden, which I wasn't able to, but maybe someday.
You mean, did you say Unterlinden? You didn't get to see the museum?
Yeah.
Ah, yeah. And it is a big museum. I mean, you can just go to the retable, to the altarpiece and just see that. But it is true that if you want to see the whole museum, it would take a good 2, perhaps 3 hours. It's not one of the tiny ones that we have in some places. And one of the things that you mentioned is that perhaps your itinerary was overambitious. And that's good advice for most people.
I'd say it was the original one I had planned was too ambitious. And then the one I revised, like I was in my hotel room a lot in Paris and I realized, especially now that I'm sick, this is just too much. So fortunately, I was able to just call the hotels and get a few things shifted around. So, it worked out. The itinerary I ended up with worked out pretty well.
And what did you do for internet access? Did you purchase a plan? What did you do?
Yeah, I bought an international plan and also the hotels had Wi-Fi. So, I could use it there a lot.
And it sounds like you didn't use apps particularly to book your hotels or whatever. Did you mostly call them?
Yeah, mostly I did it through the hotel's website. That tends to be the cheapest.
Yeah, it is.
There are a couple apps I used. I used Omio for trains.
Omio?
Yeah, OMIO. Yeah, it's for booking trains in Europe. I don't know if they do other continents, but it just puts most regional trains together into one search, and then you can book from there.
That's pretty good. I don't think I've heard about this one before.
Yeah, it's pretty handy.
Sounds good.
I went to Italy recently and I used it there too.
Aha. So compare France and Italy now.
I really enjoyed both. I think I liked France a little better, but I really enjoyed both.
In what ways? Is it the food? Is it the people? Is it the scenery? Is it the museums? The diversity, perhaps? I think France is more diverse.
Yeah, the food. I think the scenery. Both have a lot of beautiful scenery, but I'd give a slight advantage to France probably. And I like France seems to have more like different types of food, of things in the country, more the diversity. But I really enjoy both of them.
Yeah, in Italy, it felt like it was one church after another. So many gorgeous churches in Italy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I like Gothic churches a little better than Baroque. So there's that too.
Ah, yes. Yeah, that's a big one because in Italy, they're mostly Baroque, And in Nice as well. It's a lot of Baroque churches. They're beautiful, but Okay, let's see. So overall, you thought your trip was restful?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like you have major regrets.
Right, yeah. The regrets are, I wish I hadn't gotten sick in Paris and a couple of things, like could have picked a different hotel for part of Normandy. But I don't have any really major regrets.
Was the budget reasonable? Did you find France more expensive or less expensive than Italy overall?
I'd say a little less. Paris is probably more expensive than Rome, but once I got out of Paris, I felt like everything gets a lot cheaper. And Italy, Venice and Florence are still expensive, especially Florence. I was surprised how expensive Florence was. I did go to Ravenna, which is a small city.
Yeah.
That was pretty cheap. But on the whole, I thought France was cheaper. The budget was mostly reasonable. There were a couple things I could have done differently to save some money. Overall, for the length of time, I didn't feel like it was excessive.
It was a long time to stay, and which more and more people are trying to stay longer because international flights are getting more expensive. And I think typically it is better to stay a couple of weeks if you can. 3 weeks is a lot for most people.
Yeah, Italy was 2 weeks. So my next international trip, we'll see.
Yeah. Do you travel a lot internationally typically?
I've taken 3 international trips. The first one was in 2015, and then the second one wasn't until 2022. So that's a long gap. Always had stuff going on, like I had to move or finances or COVID, of course.
Yeah. Our favorite thing, COVID.
Ideally, I'd like to take an international trip every year, but we'll see.
Yeah. I love the photo you sent me with the helmet.
Oh, yeah. Like, that was a good picture from the Strasbourg Museum. Yeah.
Yes, I tried on the helmet as well. I didn't do as good a job as you did. I think everybody tries on that helmet. Yeah, well, fantastic talking to you. It's good to talk to somebody who is willing to admit that things didn't go 100% perfectly. But over 3 weeks, what are the odds that nothing would go wrong, right? Even in real life, if you think about your real life in 3 weeks, well, something upsetting is going to happen probably at one point or another. Unless you have a very charmed life. Some boss or coworker or someone is going to annoy you, right?
Yeah. When you ask me my favorite foods, I don't think I mentioned the desserts, so I'll say I really a lot of the sweets.
Fantastic. Well, Joel, thank you so much. And well, thank you for talking to me. Thank you for being a good sport about the vicissitudes of recording a podcast. And I wish you some more wonderful trips.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on, Annie. Have a good day.
Merci beaucoup. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
The Join Us in France Travel podcast is written, hosted, and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2024 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.